Welcome to the Ministry Down Under webcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Karen Stuckey, and joining me in the other seat is co-host Chris Dawes.
Hi Karen, how are you doing?
Good, thanks Chris. How are you?
Oh, doing well. Surviving at the moment.
That's great. I'm a bit nervous actually about today's meeting because we're meeting someone famous in the church media world.
That's it.
We have with us Dave Adamson, who is a Aussie, one of us.
Hey.
Yay. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, so great to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm the one who's nervous. Come on, you guys, like Australians, we critique so harshly compared to the rest of the world. So, I'm feeling nervous.
Oh, no. We're the ones to be nervous. So how do you end up, you're not in Australia anymore. I don't know why they let you out of the country, but how do you end up over in America?
So the long story made really short is that, if you had told me, if either of you guys had approached me when I was 20 years old and said, hey, one day you're going to be a pastor in America, I would have said, there's not a chance. It's not even something I even want to do. I don't want to go into full-time ministry. I never want to be a professional Christian. So, my whole, I became a Christian when I was in year 11 at high school. That's when I really started following Jesus for the very first time. And at that point, my life was headed towards a career in journalism. And so I went to Deakin University in Geelong and got a journalism. Yes, another Deakin person. So I majored in journalism and literature, and my, even in my first year of university, I already had a job at a local newspaper writing sports stories, and really that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a sports reporter, and so I worked at some local newspapers first, and then I went and worked for the Footy Show magazine. Everybody knows the Footy Show at Channel 9 in Melbourne, but there was a period where they had a short-lived magazine, and I became the news editor of that. And then when that went under, I started working for the AFL Record, and I worked for the AFL Record for all up about 5 years. And after 3 years, I actually became the youngest ever editor of the AFL Record. And not many people know that the AFL Record is actually the highest-selling sports magazine in Australia, which is kind of saying something. And because I was the youngest ever editor of the highest selling sports magazine in Australia, Channel 10 in Melbourne came and did a story on me. And during that segment that they did, the producer said, hey, you'd be good on TV. And so I actually said, oh, well, I don't even know how that looks. And so the long story short is I started working for Channel 10 in Melbourne as a sports reporter and producer. And I did that for about 7 years and literally thought that was going to be the rest of my life. Like I had the job that all my mates wanted. I covered the Australian Open in Melbourne for about 6 years. I covered AFL. I covered, surfing events down at Bells Beach. I covered golf. Like I had this job that was this was the pinnacle of my, this is everything that I was going towards. And in about 2007, ESPN in Connecticut in the US, they contacted me and, they said, hey, we've got a job going. We've seen your show reel. Would you be interested to come in and apply for a job for SportsCenter? Now, SportsCenter in the US is like the biggest sports show, on TV. And so, I thought this is the next step in my career. So I interviewed for a week, and couple of weeks later, they contacted me and asked if I would be interested in taking a position. And my wife and I decided, you know what, we should pray about this. And my wife actually suggested, why don't we fast about this? And we'd never fasted before. And I said, sure, how long should we fast for? And she said, what about 3 days? That seems like a biblical sort of number. And I said, yeah, sure. And so we did that. And then when we got together to pray, to discuss what God had talked to us about, my wife said to me at the end of the 3 days, hey, did God say anything to you? And I said, no. So I could go either way. I could stay at Channel 10 or I could go to ESPN. I'm good either way. And I said, what about you? Did God say anything? She said, you know what? God spoke to me after 5 hours and said that you shouldn't take the job. Does that make you angry? And I said, the only thing I'm angry about is God spoke to you after 5 hours, but you made me fast for 3 days. That's the only thing that's right now. And so, at that point in my life, having reached this crossroads where I didn't know what I was going to do, I just turned down the job of a lifetime, what seemed to be the natural next step in my career, I was like, I don't know what to do. So I reached out to this pastor who I was listening to on a podcast, and he was in New Jersey. And I'd been listening to him on my commute from the western suburbs of Melbourne into South Yarra at Channel 10 every single day. And so I emailed him and said, hey, man, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what just happened to me. And I don't know if I'm getting a call into ministry. I don't know what that's like. I don't want to be a professional Christian. And he wrote back and said, here's my cell number. Can you call me? And I called him. And literally within about 17 minutes of having a conversation with him, he said, hey, I think you're the guy I'm looking for who has skills in the media but has a pastor's heart to start an online church in New Jersey.
Awesome.
And so we flew out and interviewed and then got the job. And the long story short is we moved in 2008. And I became the 9th ever online pastor in the US. I was number 9 out of all the churches in the US.
Nice.
And I know that specifically because when I landed, I reached out to Brandon Donaldson, a guy named Brandon Donaldson, who was the online pastor at Life Church, and they were one of the first people to do an online church. And he said, hey, I want to invite you to this group. It's online pastors, and I was literally the 9th person in that group. And we capped it at 10. So I just made the cut. And then so I did that for 5 or 6 years. I started an online campus at this church, Liquid Church in New Jersey. And then, North Point in Atlanta, where Andy Stanley is the lead pastor, they contacted me and said, well, hey, we've got a job going. And I'd had some relationship with them. And in 2013, moved to Atlanta with my wife and my 3 girls. And we started going and working at North Point. And I'm the social media pastor now at North Point and have been doing that since 2013.
Wow.
Nice.
I've just fallen off my chair. That is awesome.
What a journey.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like a guy from the western suburbs of Melbourne, like this is the last thing I expected to be doing.
Mate,
but this is, for me, it's an indication that, God sometimes gives you a vision in your heart, which for me is to help people understand the Bible better. But he gives you the vision in your heart, and he takes the skills in your hand. And for me, those skills were media production, on camera work, all that sort of thing. And he combines them together, and that's when you know you're on the path that he wants you to be on. And so that really is my journey. That is my story.
There's hope for us yet, Chris.
Yes. Yeah, our journey's just beginning.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it.
So you are a talented newsman, and you can see that in this interview here. And you're also a talented photographer. And I know you get out there and you help churches with people in their church with photography skills and training them and teaching them. And what are some quick tips that you can share with some photographers who are watching?
Yeah, so with social media becoming more and more prevalent in society over the last 10 years or so, one of the things that I love to do is help people take better photos in their in their church environments, in their church community, so that they've got better content to put out online and to show, really to tell us. I like to say that photography is a way to tell the story of your church, because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And I truly believe that words are brain protein, photos are brain candy. And imagery, with the growth of social media platforms like Instagram, photos have really become the language of the 21st century in so many different ways. And so if we can leverage our cameras, our photographers better to take better photos and tell better stories, then we have the opportunity to reach more people. And so, I started this Facebook group a couple of years back called Church Photography Team. And it's just really a place to give tips to people to help grow their church photography team and pull all the volunteer photographers in their church to start having a strategy towards creating content that you can put out online. So, there's a whole bunch of different things that I try to help people do, even just the way that you take photos. Often photographers in church world take photos of just the sanctuary, just that service happening. The singer's up on stage, maybe there's a hand up in the air that's silhouetted, and we all love that story. and while we love those photos, that's not the story of your church. The story of your church, I think, is often happening outside in the outside the auditorium, in like the foyer, in the lobby sort of area, where people are just connecting with each other. And so I try to help teach photographers how to take photos that tell the story of their church across all sorts of, not just on Sundays, but throughout the whole rest of the week, but also help churches grow volunteer photography teams, because it's so important. And now even more, that started to shift towards video, because, in so many ways, when it comes to online content, video is the new black, right? I've got a friend here who likes to say video is the new black. And so that sort of shifted. So now those DSLRs that we used to just use to take photos take 4K video as well. So what if we were leveraging those same people to grow video teams and to take video and start posting that out onto YouTube and start making these wider connections? So it moves from photography to video and back to photography and back to video again. And so really it's just leveraging technology. I think that's what it's all about. I often think of, I often get told, you're a social media pastor, dude. What does a social media pastor even do? Like, is that even a real thing? Are you a real pastor?
Surf Facebook all day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's literally what I get told. Are you on Facebook and Instagram? Are you on Facebook all day? And I always say, no, I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. And now I'm on TikTok. So, it's a lot more involved. But from a theological point of view, how I process it is like this. The Apostle Paul used the technology of his day to connect people who are far away from him with God and with each other. The technology of his day was letter writing. Now, I don't know who your viewers, who your listeners typically are, but if you're listening, watching this, and you're under 30, letter writing is when you take a pen and you press it down onto paper and you move your wrists around, and that's called letter writing.
I like an Apple Pencil.
Yeah, exactly. Apple Pencil. So Paul used the technology of his day to do that. And I think we, as the modern day church, need to use the technology of our day, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, right, to do exactly the same thing. Online services, YouTube, to do exactly the same thing, to connect people with each other and to connect people ultimately with God.
What are some quick tips on each platform in Harrow Church? Just quick.
In 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially TikTok.
What about TikTok? Let's start with TikTok, because that's a new one for most churches.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And for the longest period of time, pre-COVID, here's the reality. Pre-COVID, here in the US, churches would debate about whether they should even be on TikTok or not, and their argument would always be, well, there's so much bad content on TikTok. When I get on there, there's so many, things that are quote unquote negative to church people. And I always look at it like this. I've got 3 teenage daughters. So first of all, pray for me, okay? I got 3 teenage daughters. Second of all, they're spending all their time on TikTok, and I want to attend a church that's leveraging the technology that the next generation is using to reach the next generation. When it came to online stuff, I remember I once used to tell people that as an online pastor, basically I have a church set up right next to a brothel, because the reality is, when it comes to online tools, when it comes to online anything, the online porn industry this year in 2020, the online porn industry will make more money than Netflix, Amazon, Google, Apple, and Facebook combined.
Whoa!
But isn't that the place where we should be? A light shines brightest in the darkness, right? So that's where we need to be. So from a TikTok point of view, you've got 30 to 60 seconds to make some content. Why not go out and just do a really quick word of encouragement to people? Like, that's a great way to do it. They don't all have to be dance videos. So I would say, have your most most outgoing student, teenager, do 60-second Bible devotion things. Read a verse of the day, something along those lines. Just something simple. Keep it as simple as possible. So that would be my tip for TikTok. Keep it simple. Do something from read a daily Bible reading, something like that. Verse of the day.
Trying to capture a moment in a meet, like you're having a connect group or a small group in context, and just capturing a moment of that. Would that be a good context?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, the way that I would put that, Chris, is simply like this. I think that, churches in a lot of ways are content creation machines because where somebody is responsible for doing a 30 to 40 and sometimes even 50-minute message every single
Yeah, that's
week,
it.
right?
Yep.
And so all we need to do in that instance is repurpose on purpose. Take that
Yep.
content and repurpose it, but on purpose, with a
Yep.
strategy. So if you're the teaching pastor or whatever in your church has done a message on Sunday, take out a 1 minute snip, a 60-second snippet of that verse and put that onto TikTok. Let people see that. If that's happening in your student environments, take a 1 minute, a 60-second snippet of that and put that onto TikTok. But then you can also do the same thing for multiple different platforms. I'm a big advocate for leveraging YouTube as much as possible because YouTube in so many ways is the modern town square. It's the modern day town square. It's where people go to, it's really where people go to find answers for everything, from fixing their car to fixing their marriage. And so we need to be leveraging content there. Now, it's one thing churches think, well, I posted my pastor's message to, 35-minute message to YouTube, so I'm done. Well, no, you're not done. You've only just started because the reality is the average length of a message on YouTube is 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yep.
That's the average length that people are watching. So what if you took that 30-minute message, took out one point that your pastor made of his 5-point message and turned that into a 4 to 6 minute video that you put on YouTube with calls to action, like links that directed people to watch the full length message if they were interested in watching any more than that. And then you could take that same content and put that out onto Instagram, do it onto IGTV with a preview on the grid, which allows you to create those posts as well. And so what you find then is that one piece of content becomes as many as 20 pieces of content that you're pushing out during the week onto multiple different platforms, whether it's video, photos, or graphics, that give you the rest of the week's worth of content from one 35-minute, 30 to 40-minute message. That's what I try to encourage churches to do, repurpose on purpose.
Yeah, and it's so simple.
I was going to say, the workflow for repurposing, what are some good tools to do that? Like, because obviously if you've got to have a repository somewhere. What repositories have you used for photos and video and things like that?
Do you mean like for sharing out or to?
Yeah, for collecting and then reusing. Yeah,
so we've made a shift at North Point over the last couple of years that I've been there. And so typically what we did was, we pushed the message out on our church online platform live on Sunday. So our pastor, Andy Stanley, would preach live in the building. We're recording that and pushing that out live onto our church online platform. Now that started to shift as a little bit during COVID because now we're pushing it out to Facebook Live and to YouTube as a premiere as well. But we used to just store all of our videos either on our website as an on-demand or on Vimeo. But over the last 2.5 years, we've stopped using Vimeo and pushed everything to YouTube instead because what we started to realize, YouTube is that town center, it's this town square of the modern day world. But YouTube is also the second biggest search engine in the world. It's the second most popular website in the world. It is the most active social media platform in the world. We think Instagram, Twitter are our social media, but YouTube is really desperate to become recognized as a social media platform. And as a social media platform, it's got, nearly 2 billion active users every single month, which makes it actually more active than Facebook. So there's so many different reasons why we have started to leverage YouTube as our place now. So that's where we put our 35-minute message. It's where we put what we call a short form message, which is a 4 to 7 minute version of the sermon, the preaching done on maybe a Monday or a Tuesday. And it's also where we put our micro messages, which for us is a 1 to 2 minute version of the same message. So that's one message that's been split up to 3 or 4 different times and pushed out into different platforms. YouTube is one of them. Instagram and IGTV is another one. Facebook is a third one as well. So we're really pushing it out to multiple platforms to reach as many different people as we possibly can, because we all know, right? each social media platform has different demographics. Twitter, for example, is mostly men. So if you're trying to reach men, Twitter is a great place to go. And I know Twitter's not as popular in Australia as it is here in the US, potentially because of the president's love for using it with people. I think that might have something to do with it. But Facebook and Instagram are predominantly women, but also from a demographic point of view, Facebook and Instagram have different roles to play as far as reaching people in either your church community or in just the rest of your general community at large. So we try to play each platform a little bit differently rather than posting all the same content to every single platform that there is. We try to mix it up and make platform specific content.
Yep. Would just as a kind of a guess, would like TikTok and Pinterest be like the video static comparison in that case? Like, so the content you put on those two, would they be similar audiences? Or they totally? I guess the age demographic's different, but
yeah, age demographic is vastly different. Like, for example, TikTok is typically, it used to be for 12, 13, 14-year-olds, but TikTok has actually started to age really quickly. What you see happening is, like, you think of Facebook. Facebook, when it first started, was for college students in the US, right? Whereas now, most of the people who use Facebook are 45 and above. So a lot of students, like my kids, for example, who are all teenagers, say, we're not on Facebook, Dad, because you're on Facebook, and the old people are on Facebook. So they would use Instagram, but then the teenagers, like the 17, 18, 19-year-olds who were using Instagram so much that the 13, 14, 15-year-olds said we need a different sort of platform, so they went to TikTok. Yet now the biggest group, the biggest age demographic on TikTok is 18 to 26-year-olds. So it started to age really quick. What took Facebook a decade to age, TikTok's done in like a year, 2 years at the most. They've started to age quickly as well. So we try to look at those demographics and figure out what we can leverage. There's a thing called Twitch, which is a gaming platform, which a lot of what we call middle school here. So that's like the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old age group.
Kids,
So they're using Twitch now to live stream messages. Like we know a lot of churches that are live streaming their kids' message, their student message onto Twitch because that's where kids are. So it's about constantly being flexible. We have to be open-handed with the platforms that we use so that we're reaching the right people in the right place. And that's really about just knowing where they are at any particular time and knowing what your target audience is.
One other platform, WhatsApp, where does that fit in? Because I find that's got a completely different demographic to the other ones again. So because it's kind of pulling groups of people.
So WhatsApp is more of it's almost like, I would say WhatsApp is more like a competitor to iMessage or texting, whatever your texting app is, but it's got a little bit more functionality to it because it's so much easier to share files, it's so much easier to record video and voice messages, and it's so much easier for groups to combine. So here at North Point, the way that we leverage WhatsApp is when we've got groups who are going on mission trips to other parts of the world, we encourage those groups to get on and start a WhatsApp group so that they can start sharing, they can basically start texting and sharing photos and videos with each other via that platform. It's not really an outward facing, it's not necessarily an outward facing platform, it's more of an internally an inward facing platform. But we try to leverage that to make groups a little bit tighter. So again, it's a great question because what it does is that it defines another demographic, right? We talk often about age demographics. We often talk about sex demographics, like where are the women, where are the men? But also it's about, where are the people who are in our church, who are part of our church community, and how we communicate to them. And what about the people who are external, who are in the community that our church is located, but we're not really communicating with them. So, we leverage WhatsApp for those sorts of things. We leverage Facebook groups for people who are internal to the church as well, because Facebook groups is a little bit more closed off, and it's a place where we can really have that insidery sort of language.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
That's cool.
How do you feel churches are going with social media during COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot has shifted in the last few months. I was actually talking to somebody today, and I said to them that I really feel like, to some extent, what would have taken the capital C Church 5 years of growth happened in about 5 weeks, because everybody suddenly started to cram in all of this innovation, started streaming online, started changing the way they did YouTube and any social media, started changing, looking at new platforms that otherwise they would never have looked at. Now they're looking at it to try to reach people. So COVID has really brought on this rush of innovation in the church, which has been fantastic to see. I've absolutely loved that. What I think moving forward is going to happen, and this is just, one man's opinion, but what I think is, typically the churches that were doing online churches before COVID, they had kind of a multi-channel approach. So there was an online service, and then there was a physical service, an offline service, right? And the offline and online, they showed the same content essentially, but they basically had a different strategy, different goals that work separate to each other. So I like to think of it like, when you go down to the local pool and they've got the lane markers in the pool, and that this area is for swimming, slow swimmers, this coming this way is for faster swimmers. You know what I mean? That's a multi-channel approach. What I think is going to happen in the quote unquote new normal post-COVID is an omni-channel approach to church. And what I mean by that is, it's when offline and online are going to be working so seamlessly together that it won't matter whether somebody's sitting in the building to access your content, or if they're watching online or listening to a podcast or watching on demand on YouTube a year after you preach that message. None of those things will matter as much. And I think that's essentially take that same pool, right? And you take out the lane markers and everybody can swim wherever they want to swim. It's like free swim time. That's what I think the church is going to become like. That's an omni-channel approach. And here in the States, I know that we've seen that happen in the secular world. It's been happening for years and years. If I want to get a coffee right now, if I wake up in the morning and want to get a coffee, I've got a couple of different options. One option is for me to drive down to the local cafe, and I can park my car, get out, walk inside like a Neanderthal, and actually line up and order my coffee and pay for it right there and there. One approach, right? Or the other approach is I can get on my app, get on the coffee shop app, order and pay for my coffee, and then drive through, pick it up at the window and just keep driving. Make sense? That's omni-channel. That's an omni-channel approach, online and offline working seamlessly together. Now, here's the interesting thing. McCrindle came out recently with some studies about church attendance, right? And what they showed was church attendance was decreasing, not just amongst the Australian population, but even from insiders. People who actually attend church have stopped going to church, right? People,
as regularly,
attenders have stopped attending as regularly. So it was one every other week, then it became every 3 weeks. I think it's now every 4 or 5 weeks, right? And so every 4 weeks they attend one time. Well, what we realized was, and we quote unquote okayed this, was that they come once the first Sunday of the month, the second Sunday they listen to the podcast, the third Sunday of the month they watch on demand on your website, and the fourth Sunday of the month they watch on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. And we were okay with that because we understood that that's the way culture was going. And really the most important thing to us as a capital C church wasn't that they were attending every week, but that they were engaging every week. This is the shift that North Point has made, the church where I'm at has made over the last couple of years. We used to have a mission to churches, unchurched people love to attend. But what's the unit of measurement for the success there? It's to attend. And people stopped attending. But we realized they were listening on podcasts, they were watching on YouTube, they were watching on our website. So what we started to realize was church attendance wasn't decreasing, it was decentralizing. People were accessing our content in a different way because, let's be honest, we live in Netflix nation, right? Everything's on demand. We watch on demand now. That's how we consume content. So what if it was okay if people did that? And really the mark of engagement came, are they giving to our church? Are they serving in our church on a volunteer team? And are they connected in a small group? Really, one of the things we say at North Point is circles are better than rows. We believe that you can learn in a row Sunday, but you grow in a circle during the week when you're in a small group. And so having that small group mentality is really a huge part of what engagement is. that pre-COVID, we had people who would attend on the first Sunday, watch the podcast on the second, watch YouTube on the third, and watch on demand on our website on the fourth. But they were attending a small group on a Wednesday night every single time, every single week, and not missing that community piece. And so if we've always said, church is not the building, it's who we are, then really it's not about the building. What if we started to measure success not on how many people were in seats, but how many people were engaged in our church? That's what I think is the future of church. And I think the capital C Church is going to start leveraging YouTube in a lot more different ways. We're going to see that as the place that people are going to find answers for everything. And so we're going to create content and keyword optimize it and present it in such a way that when somebody types into their, into Google, how do I be a better husband? How do I get out of debt? How do I find hope? How do I get through addiction? What's going to pop up are not YouTubers, but what's going to pop up is our church content that's providing the answers to those key questions. Because the reality is, guys, that's where people are typing that information. They're not walking into our church asking those questions. They're typing it into Google. And we need to get in front of those people with the answers that we know are grace-filled and come directly from God.
Yeah, there's a group over in, I think it's the US, I'm not sure if it's Faith Tech or one of those guys. They've got a website about how do I commit suicide. And they're basically trying to bring people who are Googling that into a conversation about making a different choice. So I think what you were just saying there, like I think the church is starting to wake up to some of those things, and even like when I was at a church, I woke up to this about a few years ago as well. I was sitting out in the foyer watching church through a TV with some other parents, and the ministers are like, "Oh no, you need to come inside." And I go, "No, we sit out here because the kids are noisy and we can chat about what's going on in the sermon." And it was almost like they couldn't get in their mind that we needed to consume it slightly differently, and then they closed that area down to get us out of there, and those people didn't come to church anymore because they're like, I'll go to another church that has interaction. It's kind of
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so
that's a physical representation of exactly what I'm saying. And this is why, for me, a huge part of what I've been doing during the COVID period is, North Point has like 100 churches in North America who are our partner churches. And so I've been spending a lot of my time talking with those churches initially about how to live stream. And then a couple of weeks into that, we started to shift, the conversation started to shift towards how do I do ministry online? How do I minister to people online? And here's the great thing, what's essentially happened is this now is our pulpit. This cell phone, our mobile phones are our pulpit now. This is where people consume content. And did you know that 37% of all mobile content is YouTube videos? 37% of all mobile internet activity is a YouTube video. So that more than anything tells me that churches need to understand, work out, figure out how to YouTube their church. Because if we can do that properly, what happens is YouTube and Google start to evangelize for us. They start to advertise our church content for us if we're leveraging them really well. And YouTube is one of the big things that I'm really passionate and focused on at the minute. Again, because, kind of selfishly, my kids are teenagers and they are constantly on YouTube. But all the statistics and analytics tell us that this is where people are, and this is where people are searching for answers. They used to go to the church, they used to go to the Bible to find answers. Let's be honest, that's the average Aussie isn't doing that anymore. The average Aussie is Googling stuff, and we need to learn how to YouTube our church so that we can be in those places and be really ministering to people. I think often what we think is, when we think of the term relevant in church world, capital C church world, usually what we think of is a church that has, flashing lights and moving lights and a worship leader who's got a deep V-neck t-shirt and skinny jeans, right? But relevance isn't about equipment. Relevance isn't about a fashion sense. Relevance, if I'm stranded in the desert, and Chris, you come up to me as I'm coming out of the desert. I haven't eaten or drunken for 2 weeks, and I come out of the desert, and Chris, you're standing there with a glass of water and a sandwich. You are the most relevant person in the world to me.
That's it.
Churches need to leverage things like YouTube to reach people and become relevant to the needs that they actually have. And there's so many things that we can do to reach people like that. I've created this thing called the 10 Commandments of Church YouTube. And basically it outlines ways to help churches do that, just that thing, because I really do think that's the future of our church.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. So I think if looking at that with the future of our church, I think in Australia we'll be following America with having loads of social media pastors.
Hey, hopefully, I would love that, because you know why? I think this is my honest opinion about the difference between the church in America, the church in Australia. I think the church in Australia is about 10 years ahead post-Christian, because I think Australia is 10 years ahead of America post-Christian. But unfortunately, I think the Australian church is 10 years behind America, so there's this 20-year gap, and we need to fill that as quickly as we can, because the Australian church should be leading the world when it comes to reaching a post-church culture and a post-church country. Unfortunately, I don't think we are, but man, you talk about the vision that God's placed on my heart. The vision I have is to help every church in Australia reach as many unchurched people as possible, so that growth comes not because the Baptist church down the street is failing, but growth comes because people who are unchurched are starting to appreciate the church, are starting to appreciate faith. And that's that whole idea of creating churches where unchurched people love to get engaged and connected.
I think one of the things I was saying to some pastors online in a church operations Facebook group is like, they were like, how can we get our heads around who these people are? And I go, well, all right, well, let's flip the equation. Just say someone from Church of Satan came to you and tried to get you to come to their church. What would it take for you to go to their church?
Yeah.
Because that's an opposing point of view, right? So it's like, you've got to get over those intellectual hurdles and the emotional hurdles and any baggage hurdles before you can even engage, you know. So
Chris, I completely agree. That's such a great way to put it. I always think of it as simply, and maybe I boil it down to be too simple, but you know, one of the things I love when I read the gospel stories is that people who were nothing like Jesus liked Jesus, and he liked them back. And it was really as simple as that, right? They liked people who are nothing like him, and he just liked them back. And sometimes it's as simple as that. You know, I would love it if, you know, I've got a lot of unchurched family, quite honestly. And so for me, a lot of the filter through which I see church and the filter through which I see my ministry even is what's something that I can do that would reach my unchurched family. And so for me, some of the best ways to do that is to leverage the stuff that's already out there and is already available, and it's just repurposing it and giving it a holy, redeeming that technology so that we can turn it into something that is more significant and more substantial. Because I really think that, you know, I want to see the church be in a position where the average Australian who is unchurched would say, you know what? I don't know if I agree with what that church down the road says about Jesus. I don't know if I agree with them on the whole Bible thing. They talk a lot about heaven and all that, and I don't know if I agree with that. But you know what? The Christians there are the nicest people in our community. They're the most generous people in our community. They're the most grace-filled people in our community. They're the most encouraging people in our community. And I want to see businesses say, hey, I don't know if I agree with the whole Christian thing, but I'm going to hire as many Christians as possible because I know I can trust them and they're respectful. Hey, I don't know if I agree with the Bible, but I want my son, I want my daughter to date a Christian. That's what I hope. That's what I love. That's what my vision is. And that's what I want to help every church in Australia to get to that point where that's what their community says about them.
Yeah, that's good. I love that.
Yeah, so I say all of that because while I live in the US, you know, my wife, myself, my 3 daughters, we were all born in Australia. And, you know, I don't think God gave us this opportunity to be here just so we could come and make the American church better. Anybody could do what we're doing. But I really do think that, you know, part of what our plan is, part of what our hope is to really help the Australian church reach a post-Christian Australia in a way that is received really, really well by a post-Christian Australia.
Yeah, no, that's good. Love that. So you're coming back, are you?
we're definitely coming back one way. And you know what, Karen? To be honest, Karen, this is how I connected with you, is because I'm on Facebook. You know, I've got various church communication groups, church photography group. I've got a YouTube Your Church Facebook group, but then I came across this group called Church Support Australia, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to support the church in Australia, even though I'm not living there. That's what I want to do, because my unchurched family still lives there, and I want to reach them, and I want them to get connected in the church. And so I love the fact that you guys are doing this as a way of resourcing the church in Australia, and I want to take that one step further from my point of view. Anybody who's listening to this, anybody who's watching it, I want to make myself available to you in any way that I can. So if you want to email me, the best way, I can give you my North Point email address, dave.adamson@northpoint.org, or dave@daveadamson.tv. That's another way to get me. Whatever it takes, please leave that in the show notes, leave it wherever it needs to be, because I just want to help the Australian church as much as I possibly can, because that's where my heart is.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And when you do come over next, we'll have to do something big with you, like a big
Let's do it.
or something.
Oh, that's
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on a side note to that, you talked about putting social media things in place. A lot of churches don't have 20 people to go and do all the different channels and all those sort of things. Where would a smaller to medium church start with their social media kind of strategy, or even putting together some tools to start posting to their local?
Yeah. Hey, that's a great question, because the reality is, you know, let's be honest. I work at a church that has 600 people on staff, and has 40,000 people attend every single Sunday. You know, this is not the usual church. The average church in America, and I'm sure it's the same in Australia, the average church here is under 200 people. So this is an unusual situation that I find myself in. But a lot of the churches I talk to are around that 200 people mark. And what I say to them is, the first thing that you can do is leverage a social media content calendar. That's as simple to create in just a Google Calendar can do it. You don't have to have a special, you don't have to pay money or anything like that for a special thing. Then I would say, so work out what that calendar looks like and where you want to, you know, distribute content. The next thing I would say is this: use unsplash.com. That's a royalty-free photo website, unsplash.com. Leverage that. And then my biggest tip is this: I see too many churches trying to use social media to invite people to events. We need to use it to invite people to conversations. It's called social media. Social. We have to be social on it. And so from that point of view, I often say question marks are greater than full stops. That's my simple formula. Question marks are greater than full stops, because a full stop is a statement that doesn't invite anybody to a conversation. But if you can always use a question mark at the end of your post, at the end of your captions, that invites people to a conversation. Whenever I post to my personal Instagram account, I do a Bible devotion every single day. In fact, this year alone, what I'm doing is I'm teaching Christians a Hebrew word every single day of the year.
Oh, nice.
One Hebrew word on my Instagram. But I always end it with a question. The question might be as simple as, do you need prayer today? Question mark. And it's as simple as that. Or it can be, how are you going to apply this today? So if churches who are under 200 can have a social media calendar, can start to recognize that they need to invite people to conversations, not just to events. And then if they can leverage a question mark instead of a full stop at the end of their caption or their post, that encourages people to engage. After a while, what they'll see is they'll start, you know, we get to connect with people for 1 hour on a Sunday physically, right? But we get to stay connected for the other 167 hours of the week on social media. That allows us to do that if we're leveraging it as a place to have conversations with people. I heard somebody once say, unfortunately in church world, it's not social media, it's socially awkward media, because we're just constantly posting about ourselves, and we've got to stop doing that and start posting about things that invite people into a conversation.
I think that's one of the conversations a lot of churches are having now, going back from online to offline, is they're like, oh, now how do we start our analytics again? And I'm like, oh, well, forget about quantity, go quality. Like, and they're like,
100%.
How do you measure quality? like,
Yeah.
and like you go, well, find out what are the
Yeah.
quality measurements in your church, you know.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. Because here, even in the States, it used to be, even just 2 years ago, when it came to social media, content is king, is what everybody would say.
Yep.
I totally don't agree with that anymore. I think
No.
in the modern day world, engagement is king, content is queen. So what are you doing that's engaging the people in your community in conversations? I think that's where the key is.
Yeah, no, that's good. Oh, there's so much to glean from you, Dave.
I hope so. And again, if I can be of any help, like I literally just want to support and help churches in Australia. And so please, my email address again, dave@daveadamson.tv is the best way to get me because it's my personal email address. Hit me up with anything and I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. Even if it's just sharing photo tips or sharing the 10 commandments of church YouTube, like whatever it is, I just want to help as much as I possibly can to reach more Aussies with the gospel.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, please come back to Australia. Sorry.
One
He's
day,
here
one
right
day
now.
for sure.
Yeah.
We could
One
share
day
him.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Leverage me while I'm still here. This is the great thing about technology, right? We can stay
Yes.
connected. So please keep leveraging me while I'm here. And then, one day I'll be back for sure.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. And I've truly loved it. I know Chris has as well.
Oh, man.
Because we love this topic and and you inspire us and we're very grateful that you are sharing your gifts and your talents and your wisdom with us.
Happy to help in any way that I can. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
No worries. We'll have to get you back again sometime in the near future as well. So, because I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about.
Exactly.
For sure. I'm here. Anytime you need me, I'm here. You know how to contact me.
Thanks so much, Dave.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
See ya.